Liwei gently cupped Amara's face, his touch tender yet firm, as he promised her that he would never let her out of his sight again. Shyly, Amara reminded him that he had said those words countless times before. His piercing gaze softened, and he explained that he repeated them because he wanted her to truly understand, to be prepared for what it meant. He admitted that he was sorry for not revealing certain parts of himself earlier, confessing that perhaps he had been afraid to let her see the cruel side of him. Amara kept her eyes locked on his, and softly assured him that she had never thought of him as cruel, nor had she ever seen him as a monster. She admitted that the harsh words she had once spoken were never from her heart. They were deliberate, a way to push him away and keep him focused on his mission. A sense of relief washed over Liwei, though he searched her face one more time. He asked if she had truly never thought of him that way, not even after witnessing the intensity of what he was capable of. Amara shook her head gently and told him that she had told him that, if he were a monster, then she would choose to be his little monster. Her commitment remained unchanged. She understood his motives and wanted to stand by his side, no matter the cost. Her words touched him deeply. Drawing her closer into his arms, Liwei vowed that she would never have to witness that side of him again. In her presence, he would remain gentle, shielding her from the dangers that came with his world. Amara nodded, a soft smile tugging at her lips, promising in return that she would be his unwavering support. Leaning closer, Liwei pressed his forehead against hers and asked softly if she was still his woman. Amara's shy silence was answer enough. His gaze, usually sharp and intimidating, melted with warmth as he slid his hands under her shirt, caressing the smooth line of her back while their eyes never left each other's. Amara's body weakened at his touch. Memories of how much she had missed him, especially this tender, vulnerable side of him, flooded her mind. As her breathing grew unsteady under his gentle exploration, Liwei pulled her even closer, leaning in until his lips brushed against her neck. The sensation made her entire body surrender to him. He paused just enough to look into her eyes again, his voice low and commanding as he asked, "Are you still my woman? Do you still belong to me?" Overwhelmed, Amara's breath came heavier. She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper as she confessed that she was still his woman, and she did still belong to him. Liwei's hands continued their tender exploration, grounding her in the moment while his gaze held hers captive. Still keeping his eyes on her, he leaned in and told her that once they got home, they would need to have an intensified makeup session. He added with quiet authority that he needed to punish her for all the harsh words she had said to him. Amara's cheeks flushed as she looked at him shyly, already knowing exactly what he meant. Her heart swelled, overwhelmed by the emotions surging inside her. She leaned in closer, her voice trembling but sincere as she softly admitted, "I love you." Liwei froze for a moment, her words catching him off guard. His heart clenched painfully, torn between the burning desire to say the words back and the weight of how difficult it was for him to voice them aloud. Amara noticed the slight change in his expression, but before her worry could grow, he gently cupped her face again and kissed her, letting the gesture carry the response he struggled to speak. When he slowly pulled back, his eyes remained on hers. That kiss had been his answer. Though he had not spoken the words aloud, Amara felt them in every action, every protective gesture, every tender caress. His love was present, undeniable, and written into every fiber of who he was with her. Resting his forehead against hers again, Liwei spoke quietly, his voice laced with a rare vulnerability. He said that if circumstances allowed, they could stay together in a place like this, away from the chaos, away from the endless schemes and enemies. He confessed that sometimes he wished he could be as simple as the old man, living a quiet life free of the burdens that came with power. People looked at him and assumed his life was enviable, but they could never understand the weight he carried every single day. Amara studied him with tender eyes, a smile breaking through her worry. She assured him that once his mission was complete, they would have that life together, just the two of them, finally free to be with each other. Meanwhile, at May and James's place, May was spiraling into a fit of rage. She stormed through the house, crushing everything in her path, throwing objects across the room, and breaking things out of pure fury. The thought that she had been so close to finally bringing her daughter back to a normal life, only for their carefully laid plan to be ruined by liwei, drove her into madness once again. A scream tore from her throat, raw with anger and despair. James walked in, immediately trying to stop her, but May spun on him, her voice sharp and venomous, as she shouted at him not to come near her. Her words lashed at him with a cruelty sharpened by frustration. She spat that it was all his fault, that he was nothing but a failure, both as a father and as a man. He had failed to save their daughter, failed to do something as simple as protecting her, failed to achieve the one thing she needed most. To her, he was nothing more than a good-for-nothing. James stood silently, the weight of her words piercing through him like daggers, though he did not defend himself. May's fury only escalated. She screamed that she had given him everything, the wealth, the money, the good life, and in return, all he had to do was be a man, a good husband, a strong father. Yet he was failing so deeply, so pitifully, that he could not even manage to bring back a small girl like Amara. Finally, James spoke, his tone heavy but calm. He told her that he had done the best he could, and that it was not his fault their advances had failed. He added that if liwei had not been in the picture, everything would have been simple. But before he could say more, May cut him off with a furious glare. She hissed that liwei was nothing but a young boy, someone much younger than James. How pathetic was it, she demanded, that a man of James's size and age was too much of a coward to defeat a boy like liwei? James tried to move closer, his voice low and measured as he suggested that since their attempts to capture Amara had failed, perhaps they should begin considering other alternatives. Start searching for new donors, just as they had done before. But his words only fueled May's rage further. She advanced on him, her eyes blazing. She reminded him sharply that they had already tried that option before, and it had taken far too long. Her voice dropped, venom dripping from every word, as she told him that if he still considered himself a man, a husband, and a father, then he should do whatever it took to bring Amara to her. She didn't care how he did it. Until that happened, he was not to even consider himself her husband. With that, May turned sharply and walked away, leaving James standing alone. He remained frozen in the silence, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Stress etched across his features. His mind churned with the relentless failures of their plans. He wondered how everything always seemed to fall in Amara's favor. How a young girl from nowhere could suddenly meet people so willing to stand by her, protect her, and risk everything for her. And in that moment of bitter reflection, James questioned whether he had been wrong to bring Amara to China in the first place. The following day, liwei woke up early. As he stepped outside, he noticed his car parked there, the one that had broken down before. The old man hurried over to him and explained that he had risen early, called one of his friends to fix it, and decided to bring it back to him. He added that the storm had finally passed, and he was certain the network was working again. Liwei immediately grabbed his cell phone, switched it on, and indeed, the network was back. He turned to the old man and expressed his sincere gratitude, thanking him deeply for his kindness. He added that once he returned to the city, he would always be indebted to him, and if the old man ever needed anything, he should never hesitate to ask. The man looked at him intently and said there was only one thing he needed from him. Liwei's expression shifted, curiosity sharpening his gaze as he waited for the request. The old man stepped closer and told him to take back his father's company and continue his legacy because the people running it now were clearly destroying it. Liwei froze, stunned by his words. How did this man know? He had never once revealed his background. Before he could form the question, the old man spoke again. He said that no matter how hard Liwei tried to hide it, he could tell immediately who he was, that he was his friend's son. The moment he saw him in the bush, the resemblance was undeniable. They looked exactly the same. A small laugh escaped Liwei as he shook his head slightly, telling him that he truly had good eyes. But the old man's expression remained serious. He said he believed it was no coincidence, that his friend must have been the one who brought them together. Then his tone shifted as he stepped even closer, saying there was something important Liwei needed to know. Liwei's gaze stayed fixed on him, bracing himself as the old man began. He revealed that just a few months before Liwei's father's death, he often confided in him, saying he had a strong feeling his end was near. He feared there were people who wanted to hurt him, especially those closest to him. Turning to Liwei, he warned him to be careful too, because those same people might one day come for him. Pressing further, Liwei asked if his father had ever mentioned names, anyone he suspected. The old man frowned in thought, then said his father often spoke of his brother, his business partners, and an old friend from the military whom he had wronged in the past. Before Liwei could dig deeper, his cell phone rang. It was his assistant. He looked at the old man and said people were surely wondering where he was, and that he needed to head back to the city and resume work. He turned back into the house to wake Amara, who was still peacefully asleep. Soon, Liwei and Amara were on the road, driving into the city. When his car finally pulled over at his residence, Amara stirred awake. Blinking, she looked around, then turned to him, surprised. She said she thought he was taking her back to school first. But Liwei didn't respond. Instead, he stepped out of the car, walked around, and opened her door, motioning for her to follow him. Still confused, Amara got out, and he walked with her to the house. Curiosity lingered in her eyes as she asked him again if he was going to take her back to school. She reminded him that she needed to catch up on so many things. Liwei stopped, turned, and walked closer to where she stood. His gaze locked onto hers, piercing and unyielding. With quiet intensity, he told her he had not been joking when he said he would never let her out of his sight. Starting today, she was moving in with him, and from now on, they would be living under the same roof. Amara tried to refuse, but Liwei's expression grew cold and unreadable as he stepped closer. His voice was low, firm, and unshakable when he told her that he was not asking, he was telling her. She was moving in with him, and he would not allow her to leave his side. If she dared to run, he would handcuff her to him. Amara stared at him, realization dawning. He wasn't joking. He was deadly serious. She swallowed and said she needed to inform Momo, certain her friend must be worried by now, but Liwei told her not to concern herself with that. He had already made arrangements for Momo to be told that she was with him. As for moving in, he said she could speak to Momo tomorrow when they met at school. Before walking away, he turned back and reminded her not to reveal anything about being kidnapped or what had happened to her. He knew they were close friends, but that didn't mean she should tell Momo everything. Amara nodded quietly. Liwei then told her she could go and freshen up before leaving her standing there on her own. The thought of moving in with a man unsettled her deeply. In her culture, it was considered inappropriate to live with a man before marriage. Yet she couldn't shake the truth. She didn't have much of a choice. She had already proven she wasn't good at protecting herself, and with Liwei, she might actually be safer. A small smile tugged at her lips as she thought about the brighter side of it. She would get to see him every day. They could behave like a normal couple in their own private space without having to sneak around or hide anymore. Meanwhile, after his shower, liwei sat on his bed with a cold, hardened expression. In his hand was the picture of May and James's daughter, the one he had taken a picture of when he went their house. His jaw tightened as rage burned through him. They had dared to harm Amara, even to the point of kidnapping her, injecting her with a dangerous substance, and nearly setting her on fire. That alone was enough to make his heart swell with fury. He had made a promise to himself. They would pay. And now it was time to make them see the fury of what it meant to cross him. He looked at the picture once more, then sent it to the media. With it, he revealed that May's daughter, who was supposedly traveling the world, was in fact lying in a coma, secretly hidden in their house away from the public eye. He added that the situation was suspicious and demanded investigation. After typing, he hit send immediately. He leaned back, fully aware that within minutes the scandal would erupt across the news. Everyone would know their despicable secret. He was ready to watch May unravel, and if she didn't, he would make sure to destroy her further. That was the price May and her husband had to pay for daring to touch his woman. Later that night, after dinner, liwei stood on the balcony smoking. His gaze was fixed on Amara, who sat inside watching TV. He observed every detail of her as though he were memorizing her entire existence. He thought about how she had now become the center of his entire world, how he had once vowed never to love anyone, and yet she had made that impossible. He watched her laugh softly to herself at something on the screen, finding her unbearably cute. Noticing his stare, Amara smiled at him and blew him a kiss. liwei's lips twitched into a faint chuckle, though his face remained unreadable. Finishing his cigarette, he walked back inside and stood before her. He told her he hoped she didn't mind him smoking, reassuring her that the cigarette was odorless and wouldn't affect her. Amara smiled and said she didn't mind at all. liwei then stated it was time for them to go to bed. Amara, slightly agitated, stood up and asked if they had to sleep in the same room. liwei studied her quietly before stepping closer, his piercing gaze locking with hers. He asked her what she thought. Stammering, Amara said it would be best if they slept in separate rooms. His voice deepened slightly as he asked her if she wasn't his woman. When she nodded, before she could say another word, he swept her into his arms and carried her to his room. Placing her gently on the bed, he removed his t-shirt, his gaze never leaving hers. Amara's heart raced as she remembered his earlier words about punishing her. She wondered if that was what he was about to do now. Still staring at her, he climbed onto the bed and pulled her into his arms. He told her he had already said she slept much better when she was by his side. His eyes, though silent, pleaded with her not to leave. Amara gave in, smiling softly as she told him she would stay by his side, that they didn't need to sleep in different rooms. Without a word, he pulled her closer, engulfing her completely in his embrace. Laughing softly, she teased that when he had taken off his t-shirt, she thought he had something else in mind. His piercing gaze held hers as he asked what she thought he meant. Flustered, Amara looked away, but liwei tilted her head back toward him. Leaning closer, he told her that she often called him dominant, but what she had seen so far wasn't even half of what he was capable of. Pulling her face closer to his voice dropped as he whispered in her ear, asking if she wasn't afraid that once he truly tasted her, once he made love to her, he will not allow her to breathe in the same direction as any other man, and that every part of her will be his, and his dominance will become 10 times more. His words melted through her, weakening her body under his gaze. He asked again if she was ready for that, if she wanted it. Her heart raced as she found herself nodding, telling him she didn't mind him being crazy and dominating her completely. Silence fell between them as his eyes darkened, hunger and yearning pouring into his gaze. She knew in that moment she was ready for anything, the consequences, the chaos, the possession, because that was how much she loved him. Without wasting another second, Liwei pinned her beneath him, his body pressing firmly against hers. His hand slid under her t-shirt, warm against her skin. He moved slowly at first, his fingers brushing over her stomach, making her breath hitch. She gripped the sheets tightly, her body tense, torn between stopping him and surrendering completely, yet unable to move away.